Please subscribe to this channel to support our growth before we begin. Thank you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Would you still stand by someone everyone called mad if your whole future depended on it? The hall was hot and loud when the convoy stopped outside the small registry. Ruth clutched her faded handbag in her stomach at the same time, breathing fast as whispers turned into laughter. The man by her side wore torn jeans, a ripped gray shirt, and a rope as a belt. People called him the MadMan. Today he was her husband. Her wicked uncle, Mr. Victor, stood near the door with two policemen and said loudly, "This foolish girl wants to marry a madman. Let the town see her shame." The registrar cleared his throat, ready to cancel everything, until three black SUVs rolled in and a man in a clean suit jumped out, rushing straight toward the madman. He did not look at the crowd. He looked only at the man by Ruth's side, and then he bowed. "Sir," the man said softly, eyes lowered, "the board is waiting. The time has come." The hall went silent. The madman lifted his head slowly. His voice, usually rough like gravel, was now steady and clear. He took a step forward and the rope belt slipped, falling to the floor. Beneath the torn shirt Ruth could see a glimpse of a fine white vest, clean and new. The registrar's pen froze. Mr. Victor's smile cracked. Everyone leaned in. Who exactly was the man everyone mocked? "Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from while we dive in," I said. Then we go back to the beginning. She was in her third year at the university when tragedy tore her life in two. Ruth Daniels had a father who repaired radios and a mother who sold bright fabric at the roadside. They were not rich, but they were kind. Then the call came one rainy afternoon. A truck skidded. A small bus flipped twice. The day bled into night. By morning both parents were gone. Mr. Victor, her father's younger brother, came with a fake smile and quick hands. "Don't worry, we will handle everything," he said, already collecting keys. He sold the shop for safety, took the house papers for protection, and moved Ruth to the small room at the back of the house, the one they used for old tools. He locked the main rooms and said, "You have no share. Your father owed me. If you step out of line, I will show you the paper." Ruth cried until her throat burned, then wiped her face and went to class because missing exams would not bring her parents back. At night she worked at a canteen near the junction, carrying plates, washing cups, and wiping tables while her eyes tried to stay open. That was where she first noticed him. He sat near the gutter, under a neem tree, humming to himself. His hair was rough, his clothes torn, and his sandals had no straps. The children called him Lion, because he stared with yellow-brown eyes that missed nothing. When they threw stones, he only put his hands together and bowed slowly as if saying, "I forgive you." One evening the sky turned purple and the transformer exploded with a pop. People shouted. Ruth stumbled and dropped a tray. A piece of bread fell near the gutter. The man in rags scooped it up, dusted it gently, and placed it back on the tray without touching anything else. "Your hands are shaking," he said in a low voice. "Drink water. You have not eaten since morning." Ruth stared. He was right. "Thank you," she whispered. She passed him a fresh roll, hot and soft. "For you." He nodded and broke it into two, leaving half for the night. When he ate, he chewed slowly, eyes half closed, as if tasting not just bread but peace. Days turned into weeks. Ruth started leaving small food for him after work. A spoon of yam porridge, 2 slices of plantain, a little stew wrapped with bread. He never begged. He only said, "Thank you. I will return the kindness." Once she tried to give him money, but he shook his head. "Keep it. Your school needs it." She laughed sadly. "My school needs more than my pocket can carry." He looked at her face the way a doctor checks a patient. "You will finish," he said softly, "and your hands will build something your father will be proud of." He said her father would be proud, as if he knew the man. She wanted to ask how, but then a loud horn blasted and the canteen auntie called her name, so she ran back inside. Later that week, Mr. Victor came at night and threw her clothes into the corridor. "You will pay me rent for this room," he said, "or leave." Ruth begged, "Uncle, I am still in school." He smiled with mean teeth. "That is not my problem." From that week, she slept with her bag under her head, ready in case he changed the lock. One evening she had to walk home late. 3 boys from the street followed, laughing and making ugly jokes. When she began to run, her sandal broke. One boy grabbed her bag. Before she could scream, a shadow moved. The man the town called Mad stepped between them and Ruth, silent as midnight. He did not shout. He only looked at each boy one by one with those yellow-brown eyes. The boys froze. The biggest one tried to push him, but his hand dropped as if it had met a wall. Something about the man's stillness told them danger. They ran off muttering. Ruth fell to her knees. "Thank you," she said, breathing fast. The man crouched so they were the same height. "Your sandal," he said, and fixed the strap with a quick twist of his fingers. Held. She blinked. His hands were rough but steady, the kind of hands that have done real work. As he stood, he offered her his arm like a gentleman. "My name is Leo," he said. "What is yours?" Ruth was surprised he could speak so clearly. "Ruth," she said. He repeated it as if tasting honey. "Ruth." From then on, she saw Leo everywhere. Near the transformers when they sparked, at the canteen when the generator coughed, outside the pharmacy when a mother cried because her baby had fever. He seemed to know the right wire to touch, the right word to say, the right time to be near. But he slept behind the market by choice, rolling into a corner at dusk like a man hiding from the world. The area boys mocked him. The sellers ignored him. Only one old guard from the bank sometimes nodded at him as if they knew each other from long ago. Leo never asked for anything. He refused clothes if they were too fancy. He refused money if it looked like pity. Once he disappeared for 2 days. On the third night, he came back with a cut on his arm and a small first aid kit in his pocket. Ruth cleaned the cut. "Where did you go?" she asked. He said, "I went to find a man who owes your uncle." He ran away. She frowned. "How do you know who owes my uncle?" Leo smiled, a sad kind of smile. "I know many things I wish I did not." Then he fell asleep sitting up like a soldier who has done this before. The mockery began after the accident with Mr. Victor's car. He blamed Ruth for everything now, the broken gate, the missing papers, the fake debt he had created. "I will sell the house," he said. "You will go back to the village." Ruth gathered courage and stood in front of him. "You will not. My father never owed you money. Give me the papers." He raised his hand. Before he could bring it down, Leo stepped into the compound without a sound. He moved between them and bowed his head slightly as if Mr. Victor was a king. "Please," Leo said. "Do not hit her." Mr. Victor laughed, pointing at him. "Look at your husband-to-be, Ruth. Is this your savior?" He called neighbors to watch the show. "See her, MadMan," he shouted. "She feeds him and dreams of marrying him." The neighbors laughed too. Later that night, Ruth cried in the dark. She cried until there were no tears left. Leo sat on the floor by the door, not touching her, but close enough for her to know she was not alone. When she was quiet, he said, "I will ask you a question that will change your life. But not tonight." The question came 3 weeks later. The power had gone out across the area. The canteen was hot like a pot. Ruth felt dizzy and went to the back to vomit. Auntie frowned. "Go home. You look tired." Ruth walked slowly to the neem tree and sat. Leo was there, counting something under his breath that sounded like numbers too big for school. "Ruth," he said gently. "May I ask now?" She tried to smile. "Ask." He looked at the ground. "Would you marry me?" She almost laughed, then covered her mouth because the laugh sounded like a sob. "Leo, I don't have bride price, I don't have dress, I don't have anything." He looked at her very carefully. "I'm not asking for those things. I am asking for your heart." The world grew quiet in that second. Even the mosquitoes waited. Ruth thought of the day he fixed her sandal, the night he stood in front of the boys, the many times he said no to pity. She nodded slowly. "Yes." He exhaled as if he had been holding his breath for years. "Then I will keep you safe," he said. "Even if people laugh." People did laugh, louder than ever. They laughed when Ruth and Leo went to the church office to ask for a counseling date. They laughed when they saw Ruth pick an old white dress at the thrift stall. They laughed when Leo stood outside the clinic for hours, refusing to sit while she got a checkup because a nurse whispered, she might be with child. When the result came, Ruth held the paper like glass. Positive. Her legs shook, her heart danced, and then fear pulled it back down. "Leo," she whispered, "we will have a baby." He sat down slowly on the clinic bench and put his head in his hands. For a second she thought he was afraid. Then she saw his shoulders move. He was crying without sound, long quiet tears that fell onto his dusty knees. He squeezed her fingers once. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for believing in me." Mr. Victor did not clap. He called Ruth a fool in front of neighbors. "Pregnant for a madman," he said. "You have killed any chance to claim this house. I will sell it tomorrow." Ruth ran to the church. The pastor said, "The registry is faster. Do it at once, then come for blessing." Ruth and Leo set a day. She sewed a ribbon on her old dress. He washed his shirt at the public tap and left it to dry in the sun. That night, a gang came to the back of the market where Leo slept. Someone had paid them to teach him a lesson. They hit him with sticks, shouting, "Stay away from the girl in the house." Leo curled around his ribs, not fighting, only whispering, "Please don't scare the women sleeping near the stalls." When they left, he stood, wiped his mouth, and walked to the bank where the old guard sat on a stool. The guard looked up, eyes bright with tears. "Sir," he said softly, "is it time?" Leo shook his head. "Not yet. Tomorrow." Morning broke soft and gold. Ruth woke early, combed her hair into a neat bun, and pressed her dress with books. She touched her stomach and said, "Little one, today we give you a name." At the registry the crowd gathered. Some came out of love, some out of curiosity, and many out of mockery. Mr. Victor came with 2 policemen and a folded paper. "I will stop this," he said. "This man is not well. The girl is confused. I have proof." Ruth's knees turned to water, but Leo took her hand. For the first time since she met him, he looked tall. Not in inches, but in the kind of tall that comes from standing on truth. The registrar asked for their names. Ruth answered clearly, "Ruth Daniels." The registrar looked at Leo. Leo said, "My name is Leo." He paused, eyes flicking to the door as the convoy rolled in. The man in the clean suit hurried forward and bowed. "Sir, the board is waiting." Gasps spread through the room. Mr. Victor sputtered. "Who is sir?" The registrar swallowed. The policeman shifted. Ruth stared at Leo, her heart hammering. He took a breath and looked at her, and in that look she saw everything. The hunger he hid, the nights he watched over her door, the long years of holding back something heavy. He reached for the rope belt at his waist, tugged it loose and let it fall. Stood straighter, and the torn gray shirt slid aside just enough to reveal a crisp vest under it, a shape of a tiny black device clipped inside, not something a street man would carry. The man in the suit whispered, "Chairman, please." The old bank guard had appeared in the doorway too, eyes shining, right hand over his chest like a salute. Leo turned back to Ruth and spoke in the voice he had kept buried. Calm, steady, trained. "Ruth," he said, "there are things I could not tell you. I promised to keep you safe, and that meant I had to stay hidden until the right moment." Mr. Victor tried to laugh, but it came out dry. "Hidden as what?" "A billionaire." The man in the suit lifted a folder and every head turned. On the cover was a name that even schoolchildren knew from billboards and news. Cole Group. The room inhaled at once. The suit man opened to a page of signatures and sealed letters. He whispered, "Sir, the press is outside. Your father's lawyers are here. The merger waits for your sign." Ruth's ears rang. She looked from the folder to Leo, from Leo to the stunned policeman, from the policeman to the registrar whose pen hovered above the line meant for groom. When she looked back, Leo's eyes were on her alone, not the crowd, not the folder, not the men who bowed. "My full name," he said softly, "is Leonard Cole." Mr. Victor's face drained of color. The crowd erupted. The registrar dropped his pen. The policeman nearest Victor reached for the folded proof in Victor's hand, and a small flash drive fell out, clattering on the floor at Ruth's feet. On its label, one word in blue ink, "Deeds." The suit man reached toward Leo with a phone buzzing hard. "Urgent call, unknown number." From outside, camera shutters began to snap like rain, and the convoy driver shouted, "They're coming in." Leo turned his head toward the noise, then back to Ruth. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Ruth opened her mouth, but before any sound left, Mr. Victor lunged for the flash drive, the policeman grabbed his wrists, the door banged open, and a wave of reporters pushed into the hall, microphones raised, lights flaring, everyone shouting at once. "Is the MadMan truly a billionaire? Is the pregnancy real? Is this marriage legal?" Leo took one step forward as if to speak, and then a woman in a gray skirt suit, hair pulled back, walked in with the speed of a storm and pointed straight at Leo. "Mr. Cole," she said, voice like iron, "if you sign anything before you hear what I brought, you will lose everything. And so will she." The entire hall froze as she lifted a thin envelope with Leo's family seal stamped in red wax. And Chapter 1 ends here. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth if you want Chapter 2 now. Tell me where you're watching from and I'll continue. Hall went silent after the gray-suited woman raised the envelope with the red wax seal, and for a long second all anyone heard was the loud tick of the wall clock above the registrar's head. Ruth's hand trembled in Leo's palm. Her mind ran fast. The child in her womb, the house her uncle stole, the small shop her father once loved, and the man by her side, this man people called Mad, now standing tall with his real name Leonard Cole. Clara spoke again, her voice cold and thin like a sharp knife. "There is a trap inside those board papers. If you sign before reading what I brought, your vote will hand over control to an outside firm. They will take your family's company and make you their puppet. And Ruth will be dragged into a scandal she did not build. Reporters pushed forward. The policemen tightened their grip on Mr. Victor. The registrar held his pen in the air as if it weighed 100 kilos. Leo broke the wax, pulled out the pages, and read in quick silence. His eyes shifted from line to line, then to the next sheet, then to the last, where a hidden clause had been tucked near the signature block. He looked up at Clara. "How did you get this?" She stared him down. "I wrote it years ago. I was angry. I was poor. I was easy to buy. But I could not sleep last night. Your father trusted me once. I came to fix what I broke." She turned to Ruth, softer now. "Girl, people will say you trapped him with a baby. They will say ugly things. I am here to make sure the truth wins." Mr. Victor spat on the floor. "All of you are fools. The town will still laugh at her." A flash drive fell from his sleeve and hit the tiles with a small clack. One of the officers picked it up and slipped it into his pocket. "We will see," the officer said. At the station, the registrar finally found his voice. "We can proceed with the marriage. Or you may pause." Ruth looked at Leo, and what she saw steadied her. Not money, not cars, not fame, just the same calm, steady eyes that had watched over her door when she had nothing. "We proceed," she whispered. They signed, and the room erupted. The loud joy of believers, the ugly hiss of doubters, the wild click of cameras that turned the moment into light. The convoy carried them to a quiet office 3 streets away while the crowd poured into the road to talk, to argue, to dream. Inside the office, the old bank guard stood waiting, his cap in his hands, eyes bright with pride. He shut the door and the noise of the world dropped away. Leo placed Clara's envelope on the table and nodded to the guard. "Mr. Dan, thank you." The old man straightened. "Sir, I did as you asked. The papers are safe." He pulled a small iron box from under the desk and opened it with a key he wore around his neck. Inside lay photocopies of old deeds, a map of Ruth's father's shop line, and a notebook filled with dates and payments. Ruth's heart beat faster. "Where did you get these?" Mr. Dan smiled. "Your father kept records like a soldier. He paid me to hide copies at the bank long ago in case of fire or theft. He said, 'Dan, if anything happens to me, make sure my girl can find her way home.' I kept them safe." Ruth pressed both hands to her mouth. For a moment the room blurred with tears. Leo touched the notebook as if blessing it. "Now we have truth," he said. "Truth is stronger than noise." Clara stood near the window, away from everyone. "The board meets in 1 hour," she murmured. "If you do not block the clause, it will pass. I told the legal team to hold off, but your cousin plans to rush a vote." Leo's eyes hardened. "Ethan?" Clara nodded. "He thinks you are still missing. He will use the clause to sell half the company to an outside firm. They will squeeze every worker, sell every asset, and leave you with a pretty title and no power." Ruth looked from Clara to Leo, fear tightening inside her like a fist. "What can we do?" Leo squeezed her hand. "We will be fast. We will be calm. And we will be seen." He picked up his phone and spoke into it with a voice that made even the air stand straight. "Call an emergency session. Get the board in the main hall. All cameras off. Security on every door. Patch our lawyers in. And find the original shareholder agreement." He ended the call and turned to Ruth. "You are coming with me." Ruth blinked. "Are you sure?" He smiled. "When I had nothing, you stood beside me in the dust. Now that I have everything, your place is still beside me. Always." They left the office through a side door, but the street was already filling with people trying to see, trying to film, trying to touch proof that a story like this could be true. The convoy pulled them into traffic, and soon they were inside the Cole Group Tower, the kind of building that makes the sky look close. Ruth had never been in a place like it. Glass that shone like water, floors that did not squeak, lifts that hummed quietly, portraits of old leaders on the walls. For a second she felt small, almost like a child. Then she felt a flutter inside her belly as if the baby was saying, "Stand tall, Mama." She straightened her back. A tall woman with a headset met them at the lift. "Sir, the board is waiting. We also have the lawyer team on hold." Leo nodded. "Good." He guided Ruth into a room filled with people in suits. Some stood, some stared. One man whispered, "He looks different," as if shocked that the city's MadMan had shoulders like a leader and eyes that did not look away. On the wall, a large screen showed the clause Clara warned about. A red timer blinked in the corner. 58 minutes and 12 seconds till auto-adoption. Leo stepped to the head of the table. "I am present," he said. The room stood still. Then 2 voices rose at once, one from a thin man with sharp cheekbones at the far end, and one from Clara. Point of order, they both said. The thin man Ethan smiled without warmth. Chair recognizes my motion to adopt the clause due to absence of the chairman for 12 months, he said. Leo shook his head. Objection, he answered. I was not absent. I was undercover. The word hung in the air like thunder before the rain. Clara slid a file forward. We submit evidence that the chairman acted under a security directive after an attempted abduction last year, she said. Gasps snapped across the table. Ruth went still. Leo did not look at her. He kept his eyes on the board. There was a plan to kidnap me and force a sale, he said calmly. I stepped into the street to see where the danger lived. I met my wife there. Ethan laughed. A touching tale. But signatures do not care about love. He jabbed at the screen. We have the votes. A soft chime sounded. The double doors opened. Mr. Dan shuffled in, cap pressed to his chest, with a man in a black suit carrying a leather folder. The room frowned at them, confused. Leo gestured. Gentlemen, please. The man in black opened the folder and read, Affidavit of Security Directive signed by the late Chairman Cole, instructing Leonard Cole to adopt covert status for 12 months to investigate internal threats. Attached are digital logs and time-stamped memos. The directive pauses board voting rights on major sales without the chairman's in-person, verifiable vote. The room erupted, some groans, some sighs, some angry coughs. Ethan's face flushed. Where did you get that? Leo glanced at Mr. Dan. The old guard lifted his chin. From the place you never watch, the guard room. A few people almost laughed, then caught themselves. Clara stepped into the silence. With this, the clause is blocked. We can move to protect worker jobs, cancel the outside sale plan, and investigate any internal leaks. Ruth felt a wave of warmth in her chest, then a wave of heat, then a sudden tightness low in her belly that made her grip the chair. The room tilted slightly. She tried to breathe slow. Leo, she whispered. He turned at once, all the power in his face softening. What is it? She nodded, swallowing. I need to sit. He pulled a chair closer, his hand steady under her elbow. Claire was already moving. Call the in-house clinic, she told the headset woman. Ruth blinked and told herself to stay calm. Maybe it was only nerves. Maybe it was the lights. The clinic nurse arrived fast, checked Ruth's pulse and blood pressure and smiled gently. You are okay, she said. But you need air and water. And you need to eat. The baby is asking. Ruth almost laughed with relief. Leo pressed a bottle of water into her hand and leaned close. We finish fast, he murmured. Then we rest. The meeting moved like a storm that had lost its fury. The board voted to cancel the clause, to open an inquiry, and to restore control to the chair under the late founder's directive. Leo spoke little and listened much. When he did speak, it was simple. Protect workers. Save the old branches. Invest in training. Do not squeeze people to make fast profit. Some board members blinked as if the words were a new language. Others nodded as if a tired machine had finally been turned off. Ethan did not raise his eyes again. He signed the minutes and left quickly, a thin line of anger across his mouth. Clara stayed until the votes were done, then turned to leave without a word. Clara, Leo called softly. She stopped. He walked to her and held out his hand. You could have left me buried, he said. You did not. She looked at his hand, then at Ruth, then took it. Make it worth it, she said, voice suddenly thick. Make the company kind again. She left before anyone could see the wet shine in her eyes. By the time the sun began to lean toward evening, the building had settled, and the city below looked calmer, as if the day had learned a lesson. Leo took Ruth up to the rooftop garden, a quiet place with potted trees and a small fountain that made the air feel cool. They sat on a bench. The sky was a soft blue. Cars moved like tiny silver fish far below. Ruth drank juice slowly. You went undercover because of danger, she said. Why did you not tell me? He took a breath. Because anyone close to me would become a target. Because you did not need to carry my war. Because I wanted to know if someone could love me with nothing. He turned his face to her, and the look in his eyes made her heart ache. You did. She touched his cheek with the back of her fingers. I would choose you again. Even without towers. Even under the neem tree. He kissed her knuckles slowly. Then from today, he said, we build a life where our child will never have to wonder if home is safe. The next morning the convoy returned to the registry, not for a second signature but for a blessing. The small pastor from Ruth's church met them at the door, his Bible in one hand and a shy smile on his face. He asked everyone to form a circle in the courtyard. Neighbors came again, but this time their laughter was different. Some brought flowers. Some brought apologies. Children waved small pieces of paper with the words Ruth and Elio drawn in pencil. Even the canteen auntie arrived with a warm cooler of jollof rice and said, "For strength." The pastor spoke simple words: "Love is patient. Love is kind. Love believes. Love protects." Ruth felt tears run down, but they were light, not heavy. Leo held her hands so gently that her fingers felt like feathers. When the pastor finished, Ruth's phone buzzed. It was a voice message from the officer at the station. "We opened the flash drive. Your uncle forged signatures, lied in court papers, and planned a fake sale. He will be charged. Prepare your documents." Ruth looked up at Leo, and joy broke across her face like sunshine after rain. They did not throw a big party. They went home to the small back room where Ruth had slept with a bag under her head. Leo stood at the doorway for a long time, not moving, as if reading the walls. Then he rolled up his sleeves, knelt on the rough floor, and began to stack the boxes, fold the clothes, and wipe the shelf. "We leave this room with respect," he said. "It kept you alive." Mr. Dan arrived with a pickup and 2 young men from the bank. They carried out the boxes, the little lamp, the small radio that still worked, the one her father had repaired on the last week he was alive. Ruth held the radio close. "We will put it in the living room," she whispered. "So our baby will grow up with the sound of his grandpa's work." Leo nodded, eyes soft. "Yes." When they reached the old house, the one Victor had tried to sell, Leo stood at the gate and ran his hand over the rusted lock. "Open," he said. The gate did not know his voice, but it opened anyway, as if the house itself was happy to see them. Inside, dust lay on everything like an old blanket. Ruth walked from room to room with slow steps, touching the walls, the window frames, the marks on the kitchen tile that she and her mother had made with spilled dye years ago. She sat in her father's old chair, and for a moment it felt like he was in the next room humming. Leo opened all the windows. The house breathed. Mr. Dan's pickup arrived, and the young men laughed as they carried things inside. "Madam, where does this go?" one asked. "Call her Ruth," Leo said gently. "She is not madam because of money. She is noble because of heart." The young men grinned and called, "Ruth?" She smiled and pointed, "There, please." "Thank you." Night came soft and slow. They lay on a mattress on the floor because the bed was not yet fixed. The house creaked like an old song. Ruth placed Leo's hand on her stomach and whispered, "Say good night to your child." He leaned close and said, "Good night, little one. I am your father. I'm not a madman. I am a man who loves your mother." Ruth laughed into the dark and felt the baby move, a quick flutter like joy learning to speak. "Our child replied," she said. He said, "Me too." Leo chuckled, and the sound filled the room with warmth. Days turned into weeks. Papers were signed. The court returned the house and the shop to Ruth. Victor stood before a judge and said nothing because lies have short legs. The board inquiry named the outside firm and froze the sale. Ethan stepped down to spend time with family, which everyone understood. Clara sent a short message one morning, "I have resigned. I will start over in a small firm that helps workers. Keep your promise." Leo replied with 2 words, "I will." The canteen auntie brought food again and again, saying, "Eat, eat," until Ruth and Leo laughed and gave her a key to the kitchen so she could stop knocking. Mr. Dan came every Saturday to prune the small lemon tree in the yard. He said, "When the baby comes, I will be a watchman at the gate," and no one argued because everyone trusted him to keep a gate safe. On a bright afternoon near the start of the rainy season, clouds gathered like big ships. Ruth stood in the doorway, feeling the air change the way it always does before the first drops fall. Her back ached in a new way. She breathed out slowly and called, "Leo?" He came at once, always at once. "Now?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Now." The convoy did not rush them. There was no shouting, no horns. The driver took the smoothest road. The nurse met them at the clinic door with a smile. "You again?" she teased. This time not for water. The labor was long and honest. Ruth held Leo's hand so tight he said later he did not feel his fingers for an hour, and they laughed. When the baby cried, the sound cut straight to the heart, clear, bold, brand new. Ruth cried too, but it was a full kind of crying, the kind that washes the soul the way rain washes a dry street. The nurse placed a tiny boy on Ruth's chest. He blinked at the world as if he had seen it once before and came back to finish a dream. Leo kissed Ruth's forehead and whispered, "You did it. You brought light." They named him Daniel, after the old guard who watched when no one else did. The day they brought him home, neighbors lined the street with small flowers and big smiles. Someone started a song. Someone else beat a drum. The city felt kinder for a few hours, as if a baby could teach a lesson better than any speech. In the evening, Ruth rocked Daniel while Leo set a small framed photo on the shelf. Her parents standing in front of the old shop, laughing at something the camera did not catch. The radio on the next shelf buzzed, then found a station playing high-life music, the kind her father loved. Ruth swayed to the rhythm, tears warm on her cheeks, and whispered, "We made it." Leo stood behind her and wrapped his arms around both of them. "We did not make it alone," he said. "Kindness carried us. Your faith led us. Truth cleared the way." At the very end of the month, Leo called a staff meeting in the big hall at the tower. Not the board, everyone. Cleaners, drivers, guards, clerks, engineers, managers. He stood on the low stage so he was near them, not above them. Ruth sat in the front row with Daniel asleep in her arms, the small blue cap tilted over his tiny ear. Leo lifted the microphone and spoke in simple words, the kind that do not need a dictionary. "When I had everything, I did not know the weight of a coin. When I had nothing, I learned the weight of a loaf of bread. A company is not a tower. It is people. We will be a company that remembers." He announced a scholarship fund in Ruth's parents' names for workers' children. He raised the guard pay. He created a health purse for nursing mothers. He set a rule that every top manager would spend 1 day a month on the floor with workers, doing the real jobs with real hands. At the back, Mr. Dan wiped his eyes with the edge of his cap and tried to hide it. Ruth did not hide anything. She cried openly and smiled through it. The hall clapped until their palms stung. For the first time in a long time, the building felt like home. That night, when the house was quiet and Daniel slept in a small bassinet beside the bed, Ruth lay awake and watched the ceiling fan turn. She reached for Leo's hand in the dark. "Do you think people will keep laughing?" she asked. He squeezed back. "Let them laugh," he said. "Our life laughs louder." She rolled to face him. "Will you ever go back to the street?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he said. "Not to hide. To remember. To listen. The street tells the truth before the tower does." Ruth nodded. "Then I will come too. We will bring bread." He smiled in the dark. "And sandals," he said. 4 broken straps. They lay there without words, the kind of silence that only love can make, the kind that is full and safe and bright. And that is how a poor orphan who lost everything found a husband the world called Mad, married him in the face of laughter, learned he was a billionaire who had chosen dust to protect what mattered, and built with him a new home where kindness was the law, truth was the shield, and love was the loudest answer. Please subscribe to this channel to support our growth and tell us where you're watching from. If this story touched you, drop a heart in the comments and share it with a friend who needs hope.